Hey guys, it's Joe, Igniting History. As promised, the second part of the medical achievements in the Northern Army during the Civil War. Before we get started, make sure to like our page, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I think you'll find a lot of our information there pretty cool. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about William Hammond and Jonathan Letterman today. The pictured here is William Hammond. He is the 11th Surgeon General of the United States. Abraham Lincoln chose him on April 25th, 1862, and when he did get the position, he wasted no time implementing numerous reforms that were very significant and would be felt throughout the war. So let's talk about William Hammond. One of the first things Hammond was to do was to change the qualifications and implement examination boards for the physicians who wanted to enter the Army. He knew that the physicians coming in weren't of the greatest caliber, so he made sure that these tests and boards were difficult so that the physicians knew what they were doing and the soldiers received the best care possible under the circumstances. What he did next was to change the design of military hospitals. He built a model hospital in Philadelphia. He drew up the plans himself. He oversaw the building of it, and he handpicked a team of physicians. Originally, the building was comprised of 21 one-story buildings situated in a parallelogram formation with a building in the middle for the doctors, centrally located. This hospital layout was designed for better lighting, better ventilation, better patient space, more supplies. He felt that this design would better help the patients heal. Each of the wards had 50 beds. He assigned one person in charge of each ward. For every 75 beds, there was one attending physician, like we would know of nowadays. And then all those 75 patients would be assigned to that person. It sounds like a lot, and it probably was. Under that medical officer, a medical cadet would be assigned 50 beds to help with the load. Hammond was very steadfast in his belief that the hospital and others like that would be a medical institution, not a charity as they were before. In addition to changes at the hospital level, Hammond was also noticed a need for standardizing medication and pharmaceuticals. So he created a standard medication table specifically for the military. He started laboratories that would manufacture the much needed medicines. He also knew that hygiene wasn't something that was of great importance at the time, so there were no guidelines to follow. He went out to write the industry standard for hygiene at the time. As a matter of fact, in total, Hammond would write around 400 articles and about 30 books in his lifetime, so he was a pretty accomplished guy. His reforms were very effective. He saved many lives, probably around, estimates are about 26,000 soldiers due to just his reforms by himself. That doesn't include his counterpart, Letterman, which we're going to talk to here in a little bit. However, as the great will rise, the great also do fall. Not everything he touched turned to gold. We'll just say that. His main rival, Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, and other contemporaries would describe Hammond as boastful, arrogant, impetuous, insensitive. He had a strong opposition from this guy here, Stanton, from the beginning, from the outset of him becoming Surgeon General. It was never a good relationship. Stanton had favored somebody else for the post, and he knew that Hammond was wasteful. He had a budget of $10 million, which is a lot of money back then. That's a lot of cash, and that was 4 times what the guy Stanton wanted as Surgeon General, had quoted him. And even that $10 million, Hammond still came over budget about 15%, so about $1.5 million. Which again is not a ton of money for back then. However, Hammond did himself in when he decided to make changes to the very medical table that he created for the medicines for the military, he decided to change it and take two of the most popular medications off the table. This would really, really get under the skin of the physicians and anybody working around that. So when he came back from a medical tour of the South and the West, he found his job had been replaced. He was court-martialed and lost. His reputation would be restored, however, many years later in 1879, after a congressional hearing. That's a little late. But on the flip side, Hammond did become the first American to devote his studies to neurology, the study of the brain and nerves. And he was the author of the first American treatise on neurology and was a founder of the American Neurology Association. So, boo-hoo, you got kicked out of the Surgeon General, but you did a lot of things to help out the medical field. However, one of his best and most important accomplishments was to name Jonathan Letterman medical director of the Army of the Potomac. Letterman was born in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. His father was a well-known surgeon. He graduated from Jefferson Medical College in 1849, and following his graduation, he was given a post in the Army Medical Department as an assistant surgeon. So Letterman would serve in Florida during the campaigns against the Seminoles until 1853. From there, he would fight numerous other campaigns until the Civil War broke out. And in May of 1862, Congress would appoint him medical director of the Department of West Virginia. A month later, Hammond, as he was still medical surgeon general, promoted him to the rank of major and named him director of the Army of the Potomac under General McClellan. Once Letterman began his new appointment, he started reforming the Union Army almost right away. When he arrived, he found that the Army of the Potomac was in a very bad state. They had tens of thousands of veteran troops with a bunch of new recruits. The Army was unproductive. As he saw it, one of the main reasons for the ineffectiveness was due to sickness and the wounds of the soldiers. This was an army of about 100,000 soldiers, and 30,000 of them were unable to fight due to illness or being wounded. He couldn't do much for the wounded, but he could do something for the illnesses and to combat the sickness. And that was basically a problem of sanitation, which we're seeing a lot of. We noticed that in the American Revolution. We noticed that in the Civil War as well. Got to keep things clean, right? So what he did was, one of his first reforms was to change where the troops would go to the bathroom. They would be away from the camps. They would dig pit latrines. After it was so far full, it would be filled up, and then another one would be dug. They would use the same procedures for animal waste and kitchen waste. He ordered all troops to bathe at least 15 minutes every week in a river or another body of water that was close to their encampments. Once he dealt with sanitation, the next problem he wanted to tackle was getting troops medical care in a timely manner. This was a big deal. If you're on a battlefield and you're wounded, it could be miles before the nearest medical care, and by the time you got there, you may bleed out, die of infection. So he wanted to make sure that the troops that were wounded were treated as quickly as possible. Before he did these reforms, surgeons and physicians would have to triage the wounded on the battlefield and then move them to a regimental hospital. This was not effective at all. So what he did was he changed the responsibility of the physician to just caring for the wounded in the treatment areas. Okay, so you're the doctor, you care for the wounded. Let somebody else bring them people to you. So he created an ambulance corps. And in 1862, he acquired a number of wagons that would support the troops at the front lines. He had special uniforms made for them, special insignia. This was to be a very honorable post, to be an ambulance corps member. The ambulances all had the same supplies. They all were stocked exactly the same. They were able to get to the troops a lot quicker, load them up, take them to the hospitals, get them the care, and this saved countless lives just being quicker to the spot. And this would be the precursor to our modern ambulance system as you see it today. Again, his reforms were very, very important. As you see here, this is part of the ambulance corps. You'll see them loading a soldier in there to get transported to a regimental hospital. Here's a bunch of them kind of in line, ready to go. Okay. His third reform was to solve the issue of supplies. Letterman would be solving some supply issues. Before him, a lot of the supplies were misplaced, or they weren't delivered on time, or what was said to be delivered was never delivered. So what he did was he put the responsibility of the supply chain on the brigade surgeon. He would be in charge of all supplies, made sure that they were all accounted for, and they got to where they needed to be. He standardized all the ambulances, like I said earlier. He made sure every physician had the same kind of bag with all the same medicines and tools and anything he would need on the battlefield. So a lot of standardization here. And then lastly, his fourth reform, Letterman would focus on the organization of the field hospitals, particularly at the division level. His plan was to have one physician from each regiment to set up a medical aid station near the front lines of a battlefield, kind of like a triage station. The rest of the physicians would convene at the field hospital behind the front lines. He preferred that any surgical procedure be done by a group of 3 dedicated surgeons per each division. These surgeons were chosen by experience and by demonstrated competence. So you had to be really good, and you've had to have done it for a while. If you wanted to become a surgeon and part of this 3-surgeon group, you're expected to have the technical prowess and really pretty much hold the title of operating surgeon. So this wasn't something that anybody could go in there and, try to go saw off a limb. Okay, we're not having that anymore. We're done with that. He even starts keeping track records of the wounded. So your first records of patient wounds and things of that nature, Letterman has taken on as well. Letterman would be known as like the father of battlefield triage. All his reforms were eventually going to be adopted by the rest of the world. However, they had to first be tested. So it's great. Yeah, this all looks great on paper. Oh, gee, great. Yeah, thanks, John. We'll see you later. However, Letterman's reforms were first tested in December of 1862, Battle of Fredericksburg. The Union Army did suffer about 12,000 soldiers lost as casualties. However, experts all agree that if it weren't for Letterman's reforms, the amount of wounded and dead would have been a lot higher. Once this was demonstrated, Congress made his reforms mandatory throughout the entire Union Army. And again, as that became the standard in the Union Army, it would be the standard throughout the world after a while. His name is synonymous with battlefield triage, and without him, there would be a lot more wounded and or dead in the Civil War, at least on the northern side. That concludes the medical achievements, 1861 through 1865 for the Northern Army. Hope you enjoyed it. A lot of information coming at you at once, but I want to make sure we got this taken care of. Make sure to check some of this stuff out on the web. William Hammond, he's got a couple books out on him. There's a lot. Every Civil War book that has anything to do about medicine is going to have something about Letterman in it. He's very famous. So there's a lot of stuff out on him. Thanks again for watching. Please make sure to like and follow, subscribe our page. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. We hope to see you there, and look forward to getting the next video out. Hopefully it's going to be either on Roman engineering or Hannibal of Carthage. So we'll see which way the vote sways. Have a great weekend, guys. Talk to you later. Tell your friends about us.